about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
And we're back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So I got to tell you, the drama never stops. Okay, now we have Trump versus the Pope. Something that I don't think any of us wanted to see. Not surprised it's happening. But now we have Trump and Pope going back and forth. I like Pope Leo. I think it's really, really cool that he's American. I love being able to hear him now and understand him without a translator. I mean, I can understand some Italian. I can. But to actually, see the Pope, in a press conference and be able to, hear what he's saying from his own mouth, it's, firsthand and not secondhand. Pretty cool. I love us having an American Pope. But what comes with an American Pope is America is very politically charged. And so when you would think the Pope would be, just more on the pious religious side of things, it was predicted that Pope Leo would probably weigh in on politics. About a week or two ago, when he had brought up that, God does not look kindly upon those or does not listen to the prayers of those who wage wars, I was a little confused by that because God anointed King Saul, anointed King David, Solomon. God wanted, he wanted the kings to make sure the enemies didn't destroy, the Hebrews and the good people and the this is why the Amalekites and the Hittites and the Philistines are gone, because God had ordered Moses to go to Pharaoh and take Ramses II on, take the Pharaoh on, say, let my people go. And so we know that God has been involved in wars. And, in terms of Iran having a nuclear weapon, Trump disagrees with the Pope, saying that, Iran is evil. And this is, God would not want Iran to set off a nuclear weapon. So whose side is God on? Is it fighting the evil regime in Iran, or the side of not just let Iran do what they're doing and let's go about peace? And so they're going back and forth. Trump says he's not a fan. He's not happy with the Pope. He said the Pope is weak on crime, and the Pope's job. And again, I'm not Catholic, but from what I understand and what I really appreciate with the Pope is the Pope helps, focus and a lot of the the clergy and the religious sects and brings them, is a light sort of bridging we humans to God. And so the Pope is not necessarily godlike, but he's the closest one on this planet to God. See, rabbis aren't like popes. Rabbis are teachers. Now, I do believe rabbis know how to communicate with God better than we do, because I'll try to talk to the Lord. And he's like, can you keep it down? I'm trying to get some work done. All right. What you have to say right now is not very relevant. Yeah, but I got some opinions. So I'm sure God listens to rabbis more, but rabbis are more teachers. The Pope is in this position where he sort of channels, what, and bridges the humans with God. That's how I've always looked at the Pope. And so when the Pope, dislikes something and brings up politics, it does start to, shatter some people's kind of faith of, I thought, his priority is God and scripture and all that. And then when people felt that he misinterpreted, the Pope isn't supposed to get scripture wrong, and the Pope isn't supposed to, get any, what he says is usually something that we all, agree on. God wants peace, absolutely, but the idea that God does not want people to wage wars, that's a little contradictory to what happened in the Bible. Is the Pope in his right, allowed to want peace? Absolutely. Him wanting to pray for peace, him wanting to pray that this conflict ends, him wanting to, did he make comments talking about omnipotency and other things as it relates to Trump? Apparently he has. And so if Trump feels like he went out of his lane, now Trump's going out of his lane, and I think it's a mess. So who is going to win when it comes to Trump versus the Pope? Well, what's the goal? Is the goal for the Pope to not get political and not get involved in political things? The problem with that is, like we saw with the previous Pope, a lot of Catholics are bringing up to the diocese and all that, what do we do about abortion? What do we do about divorce? What do we do about, there's a lot of things that have now evolved in Catholicism to modern time. And so the church is struggling with, do we stick with tradition, and do we stick to what we always, believed, or do we now bend and evolve and become more flexible because we have a society now that is, just like how the church had to re-examine their attitudes towards the LGBTQ AI plus community. So, that's not unique in the church trying to maintain their relevancy, still be able to attract, worshipers and believers, but not be so rigid that it prevents anybody from trying to find God. On the other end, for them to weigh in on politics, it is a little unique. Has happened, in the past, but it does, I think, offer an opportunity for more drama when there shouldn't be. Now, if the Pope has an opinion, I would like to hear his opinion. But when it comes to who's going to win with this, I think we're going to be losers. We as people who are people of faith, we are going to see, unfortunately, which we've already seen, some sides of shall we see, both Trump and the Pope that we didn't want to. For me, my first Pope was Pope John Paul II. Smiling, all about love. We love all creatures. We're not going to find fault, and I'm not judging because it's God's job to judge. I'm here to spread the gospel. Be there for you, etc. And so things have now gotten a little different because people want to communicate with the Pope and want to know their opinion. So I don't think either are going to win, but I think the losers are going to be us because now religion is again thrust in the middle of politics. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799 and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
Hi, it's Mark Falter, host of the Financial Fitness Show. I strongly believe that no one should ever pay 1 penny more in taxes than they are legally obligated. Unfortunately, for most hardworking Americans, this just isn't the case. Why? Because most people spend more time planning next weekend's getaway than trying to ensure they're going to pay less in taxes. My financial fitness team has put together some materials that I know are going to help you. It's the Tax Savings Kit. Tax Savings Kit includes 3 things: free tax analysis, top 10 ways to pay less in taxes, and an investor's guide to taxes. Now, how do you get it? Simple. 866-764-2635. Again, 866-764-2635. I'm Mark Falter. This is Financial Fitness, making personal finance profitable.
We're back on the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So one thing I am going through right now that nobody ever really talks about, but it's something we all deal with, is the body breakdown or our age adjustment. And what that period is, it's not a midlife crisis. And we talked about how a midlife crisis, why people have them, and it should be more of a midlife reboot where people hit an age and they look at all the things they had done and they're like, I'm going to change that and I'm going to experience life before I leave this earth. Yeah, that's kind of the psychology behind the midlife crisis. But this is different. When you start going through body breakdown, it is pretty traumatizing psychologically. And what you decide to do during this period will make and break your longevity, your life expectancy, your happiness, and how you live the rest of your life. Nobody talks about this. So what is the body breakdown period? Well, here I am. I'm thinking I'm 16, 17, 25 in my head. If there was no mirror, I would seriously be having the image of me in my, teens or 20s. But what happens is I go to play, tennis or racquetball or pickleball, or I go to jump on a ride at an amusement park, or I want to quickly run and chase something or lift something, and the body isn't letting me, or I'm falling and then I can't get up, or things are starting to hurt, or now I have to alter the way I do things. And I was with my nephews and my sons, who are all Gen Z, and they're younger. And I told them, I go, guys, what I'm going through right now is how, my mind is, all the jokes you guys are making, and boy, do they make a lot of, let's just say fart jokes, with just some of them. I love that stuff, but my body is not keeping up. I mean, I want to be able to hike and do things. And, because we're all, like, hey, let's all go to Six Flags. Let's all whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, I love that. I'm going to go. But do I have to stop and realize that I could throw myself into an arrhythmia or a stroke or something like that? And so when your mind and your body aren't on the same page, it's difficult, especially when your body is starting to break down when you don't want to. I hurt my shoulder. I don't know how I did it. I was either doing a VR exercise game. I was either at the gym. I was either walking the dog and the dog ran with the leash, or was playing pickleball. One of those four things. And now I'm noticing I have to dress differently. I even had to have my husband help me dress and take off and on my clothes. He's like, oh yeah, but because my shoulder, it's really, really hard to take off your shirt and clothes, and I can't externally rotate. And so now I got this disability here that I got to, I guess, deal with. And I'm afraid that I have such wear and tear from all the sports and skiing and running and falls and things I've done that I'm not going to, get that back. My knees, my hips, all these things. And I know we all, complain that we have arthritis and all that, but if I give in to my body breaking down, I'm not going to stay young. I'm not going to stay active. I don't want to say I'm not going to go somewhere, I'm not going to do something, because I am afraid that my joints or my back or even our bowels, that's a whole nother thing with body breakdown. Now I got a plan. I always have to know, like at Disneyland, where the potties are. Luckily I have them memorized because I've been there enough. But, I need to know because I want to make sure I don't have an accident, right? And so these are things, and you could get through it, but it's like, it's so much work. And, some days I'm thinking to myself going, come on, man, this isn't cool. Now, I should be thanking God. I should be very, very grateful that I'm able to still move and do the things I need to do and all that. But I can't stand the fact that things are breaking down on me. I mean, I'm going to have to get knee replacements and hip replacements. And oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on now with the shoulder. What I do is I do therapy. Like I'll, in the hot shower, be able to lift up my arm and stuff. But for me to externally rotate, it's almost impossible, which means there's something going on. Either I have a slap tear, a rotator cuff injury, or a major bursitis, or who knows. But, when you have told yourself, I'm not going to let age get me. I am going to be active with my kids, with my nephews, later if I have grandkids, and your body doesn't keep up, you start to go through something psychologically. And then you start to worry that you aren't going to be able to do things with your grandkids, or you're not going to be able to do things. I mean, I always thought growing up, I'm going to be not only a cool aunt, but I'm going to be the coolest grandma. And I'm going to be like, well, let's go hike up Mount Charleston. Let's go do this. Let's go, river rafting. Let's do this. And I said that to myself because, well, I don't know why all these older people aren't doing it. I mean, it's fun. They could do it. They're not going to break a bone. And now I'm like, gosh, that last fall I had, what if I broke a bone? What if so aging is going to get to you no matter what. And we don't prepare for that. I remember, for years, my mom had said, be careful running. You're going to ruin your knees. You're going to ruin your knees running. And I'm like, no, I'm not, because running is exercise. It's keeping me skinny. It's going to be fine. Well, it did. The running really put a lot of wear and tear on the knees. And so I don't want to not exercise, because if you don't exercise, that's also bad. I think having active aerobic exercise is very, very good for you. But to be middle-aged and now your body is starting to fall apart, whether it's you can't see that well, you can't hear that well, you can't move that well, you can't run like you used to, you have to plan when to potty, your bowels are unpredictable, things like that, it stinks. And here I am trying to still be active, and it's like the body wants to fight me. And once I give in, well, now I'm going to be at higher risk for diabetes or for heart disease. If I don't stay active, then it's a snowball effect. And so it's a very frightening period of time that a lot of us are going through, but nobody talks about. Nobody has named it. Do we call it, body breakdown? Do we call it age adjustment? What's the name for that? Now, some people in their 30s have called something like the 30s shift, where you start to notice changes in your body in your 30s than you did in your 20s. Okay, that's great. So you could have the 30s shift, the 40s shift, the 50s shift, the 60s. But, I see people of all ages going through the exact same thing, and I don't know what to name it. And I'm sure there's some sort of a name. But, the day I say I gotta, scroll this back and I gotta, sit this one out, I don't want to sit anything out. I just don't. I was walking around. We did a lot of walking. I got a lot of steps. I was good. And for a brief moment of time, my legs started to hurt and I wanted to sit down. And I'm like, oh, come on. I'm not going to be one of those grandmas later where I have to sit down. Well, maybe I am going to have to be. Because that's what happens when we age. And so what do you do when you see your body start to deteriorate? I mean, I've already seen my looks deteriorate. That was not easy. But you know what? I'm like, this is how I look. It's fine. I'm not fine when it comes to my body. Because if you're hurting, you can't sleep well. If you can't sleep well, you can't, do what you need to do in the morning, and then you look to caffeine to wake you up. And if you can't exercise, you get fat. You gain weight, and then you can't, stave off diabetes. And so, how to combat that? Well, one is don't wait until your body is breaking down to the degree that I think mine is right now. Yeah, I mean, if you have an issue with one joint, don't ignore it. Get it addressed. And I understand my sort of thinking, which is the Gen X thinking, is if you don't think about it, it doesn't bother you. It doesn't stop you. So I just didn't think about it. If you have a will, you have a way. The only problem now is I willed any idea of pain or any of that away. And then now the body's like, you got issues and we got to deal with these. And I'm not going to be able to completely fix every single joint. It's not going to be possible. I'm not going to have my joints back. And so my advice to anybody younger, and this is what I told my nephews. I go, guys, this is what I'm, starting to see my body go through. So don't put off tomorrow what you could do today. Protect your joints, protect your body, treat it like a temple, but enjoy and do things. You want to do things. One of my nephews skydove. And I was like, impressive. If these are things you want to do them now, because your body may not allow you to do things later. And you are one day going to age and you're not going to like it. So one is, if there's something you want to hike or summit or do, as long as you know what you're doing and protect yourself and, and understanding safety and all that, do it. And if you have an issue with your neck or back, go to a chiropractor or an osteopathic doctor and get yourself realigned. Don't let things go and then let arthritis set in, because some of these things are just, diabetes. Once you get diabetes, that's really hard to get rid of. So if you're like, gosh, I could drink all this soda, I could eat all this crappy food, and my sugars are nothing like my parents and brothers and sisters and all that, you got another thing coming, because once you get diabetes, that hits you like a ton of bricks. So preventatively, look at what happens to older people and try to, slow that down by taking care of yourself. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, don't go away. Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Lisa Wolf here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you. And be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOCDALI. So many of us saw this video footage of this guy, Jason Nichols, 30 years old, allegedly screaming at an owner of a home to have his daughter come out. And he starts banging and destroying the property, goes around the home, breaks in through a side door, and luckily does get detained. But you're looking at this person as, who is he and why? He's from Fairfield, California. Jason Nichols, 30 years old, has been charged with first-degree burglary, assault with a deadly weapon, criminal threats, and vandalism. He was arrested after allegedly trying to break into a home of a woman and a child, and this was last week. Police said he tried to kick in the home's front door, later entered through a sliding glass door. Apparently, he assaulted a person with a shovel and made threats that caused fear for safety. He damaged property, including that glass door. The husband of the homeowner, I don't believe was home at the time, saw Nichols through a home security camera that you can access on your phone. He immediately, he was talking to him, trying to say, what do you want, man? What's going on here? And then he was able to get to the house, grab the shovel, and then had a fight. They both received head injuries. Nichols has been taken into custody. Thank God the father was able to get back in time. But on April 13th, police said a witness reported an encounter involving Nichols and their child. This was back on April 5th. Police, according to ABC 10, said there was probable cause to arrest Nichols on suspicion of annoying or molesting a minor. The arrest happened when he was already in custody for the April 7th incident, but nothing happened on April 5th. So this guy was out and about. And you look at him just, looking at really frightening. I don't know who this person is, why he wants the family's daughter. And it's disgusting. And he basically says, open the door or I will blanking end you. And so I've, had the shall we say, benefit being a physician to see all sorts of human behaviors and psyches. And so I learned in medical school, I remember second year medical school, they told us 1 in 3 people have mental health illness, 1 in 3. And, I'm actually thinking that might even be more. Whether it's anxiety or depression or, suicidality or, mental health illness doesn't mean you're evil. Doesn't mean you're bad. I mean, you could be struggling with something that has to do with mental health. So I think the number is higher. But in terms of, if at the lowest percentage, 33% of our population may have a severe mental illness, and we have over 300 million people, that's pretty frightening. That means there's about 100 million people walking around that could have severe mental illness. And it's really hard to find the numbers because like somebody like this guy who's running around, obviously he's been around for a while. He's 30. And so now he gets caught because he acts out. It's on camera. I got to tell you, these camera doorbells are amazing. And the Ring camera footage. If you can get it, because it also helps in case there's something else that happens across the street. So we've been able to find the criminals, but we keep getting more and more criminals. And so what could be going in this guy's head? I mean, he probably was possessed, either through this mental illness or the devil or however you look at things, where he felt he needed that child. And it sounds like he knew that he was watching, that he was scoping out that house, staking it out, and he knew there was a girl in there. I was really disappointed in my mom and how she raised me, and I was really, really disgusted by she never would let me grow my hair out. She, the clothes I wore were very, ugly and whatever, and I was like, why is she doing this to me? Why is she making me look like a boy? Well, I didn't realize that she did that to protect me, because we had a family member who was gang raped, and she didn't want that happening to me. So she'd rather I look like a boy than a girl to protect me. And I think she could have done it differently, because I got to tell you, school was really, really rough. When you look like a boy and you're supposed to be a girl, and with the way they cut your hair and all, I mean, it was not fun at all. But she wanted me to be as unattracted as possible, so I wouldn't be a target. So there were always individuals out there that would hurt or molest or rape. But it seems like because we have a higher population, we have more of that now. And maybe also it's because it's being, documented more and reported more. But, when I talked about yesterday, when there was a man that everybody thought was homeless, and they were driving around him and leaving him there to rot. And he actually was a man in his car who looks like went unresponsive, was having a medical event. And I went up to him, and I was a little nervous because I didn't want to be grabbed into the car, and I didn't want to be stabbed or anything like that, because you don't know who you're approaching. But I'm like, if this guy needs medical care and nobody's doing it, I'm going to do it. And thank God somebody did call the paramedics, because they thought it was somebody who was homeless or whatever. And so luckily the firefighters came out first to go and assess the situation. And the fact that I can't just jump in and pull him out of a car. I mean, for me to be alone, and I was kind of boxed in because somebody was parking and really upset that they couldn't park because the guy was halfway into their parking space with his legs. I mean, it was ridiculous how people acted. But, the fact that I had to worry, because they always tell us, don't be you can get trapped by thinking you're helping somebody medically, and then they pull you into their car or they hurt you. I mean, then this ruins it for the rest of everybody else. Then you have somebody who's sitting there dying and nobody's helping them. Everybody's just walking by. I had a friend of mine who fell down a hill, lost consciousness, hit his head, was lying there on the sidewalk, and nobody stopped to help him. They just thought he was homeless. And honestly, a homeless person deserves medical care too. We have a society now where we're all distrustful. We have individuals that will just randomly stab, hurt people. And so now we assume that the average person, to play it safe, can hurt you. And this is why we're going to tech and AI, and people have become anti-people. There's individuals that don't want to date anybody because they're afraid that later they'll be accused of assault. You have individuals that are assaulting and doing bad things. And then you have people fearing that like there was I guess this woman, we're going to be talking about this later, where she claimed ICE detained her for hours. And the receipts of the cameras evidence shows she was hanging out at a spa at a hotel. Between the people lying and faking it and making, people look like they're evil to people actually being evil, the average human doesn't know where to go and what to do. And thank God that this dad could, through the camera phone, I mean, I'm sure the wife called the police, and then the dad on the camera phone tries to, calm this guy down, and then he races back and then helps fight him. I mean, thank God he wasn't far away, but this could have been bad. This guy looks like he wanted to murder this woman and her child. And the fact that he had an alleged pedophile issue, possible pedophile issue prior to that. There's sick individuals out there. And I don't want to tell you, assume everybody has a problem until proven otherwise, but just protect yourself. Don't walk the dog without having something like a knife or something on you, so that if somebody comes up to you, like what happened in Philly, where somebody was just walking his dog at 7:00 at night, and then he gets shot point blank in the chest. Understand that you might be living in a world that was safe at one time, but it just doesn't seem safe now. And these people are crazy. The fact that I am hearing some people on podcasts say that they side with Hamas after what they did to women and children and beheaded babies and killed people, it's frightening to think our fellow humans don't think like us. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away. Hi guys, Dr. Dahlia here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdahlia.com. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Hey, America. How tired are you of mainstream corporate media's biased narratives and manipulated news? Their dishonesty and attempts to influence this generation have been exposed, put on display for anyone who's even half paying attention. But the New American Magazine has been an honest source of news and commentary for over 50 years. This is your opportunity to receive the stalwart of principled journalism at a deep discount. Picture a beautifully published magazine arriving at your doorstep twice a month, packed with insightful stories written with integrity. It's also available digitally on the New American's mobile app. Get up to speed with intelligent coverage from a freedom perspective. Right now, for a limited time, the New American is available to radio listeners at a 25% discount on a new subscription. Visit thenewamerican.com/radio25 and receive 25% off. Subscribe today at thenewamerican.com/radio25.
We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Doc Dolly, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So where's the money? Sometimes we have amazing ideas and platforms, and we make these suggestions that we think everybody's going to like and love. And so when the GLP-1 weight loss shots came out, well, they've been out for a while for those with diabetes, but when their indication for weight loss started to become very popular over the last few years, many of us were shocked by the sticker price and, $1,100, $1,500 a month. And there was this huge movement to make sure that government-run insurance covered it and paid for it. And the argument was, which was a valid argument, that if we could get the weight off a lot of these individuals, it is going to save money in the long run as it pertains to diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure. So if we could get obese people who are on Medicaid and Medicare slimmer, it'll save money in the long run. And that was a fantastic argument until we realized that not everybody was losing the weight permanently, or they would start to plateau. And so states now are starting to make the very difficult decision of, do we cover these medications or not? On top of that, even though Trump did a good job negotiating with Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk to bring down the prices, they're still expensive. They still average $399 on up a month. Now, why would the states say we're not doing it anymore? Well, it's because they don't have the money. If the state's Medicaid program needs to cover cancer treatment, diabetes treatment, prosthetics for amputations, how much of those resources should go to the GLP-1 shots? So this is what people are debating. So we're being told that California, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, North Carolina, and I think those are ones. Even Michigan have started to reduce, either end or restrict coverage for GLP-1 drugs. As of January 2026, California, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, their Medicaid or Medi-Cal can't cover it anymore. North Carolina just recently ended it. Now, what Michigan did is they restricted it not for people who are 110 pounds and want to look better in a bikini. They restricted it to those whose BMI was over 40. And so for morbidly obese. And then I believe Rhode Island and Wisconsin are now considering restricting it. So my question to you all is should Medicaid cover these GLP-1s in hopes of weight loss and cardiovascular and renal benefits and decreased cancer risk? Or should they use the money for other, use their limited resources for other medical conditions? 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. The issue we're having is the GLP-1s are not going to be our cure for obesity. We thought they were until we saw people go off the medication or not be able to afford the medication. And so the average person needs to be on that medication long term, which means if the average person, and I think we're at 20% of the population, we're being told 20% of the adult population are on these medications. Those are millions of people. That's trillions of dollars then that have to be spent to keep these people on the medication, because if they stop it, like I warned you guys, that there's all these cardiac benefits and renal benefits and decreased cancer risk when you lose the weight on Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, Mounjaro. That's awesome. Yeehaw. That's wonderful. But where are the studies showing that if you can't afford it, you can't stay on it, you can't tolerate the side effects, what is then the cardiac risk for the rebound weight gain and the renal risk and the cancer risk? And slowly we're seeing studies going, whoa, you're going to have to stay on this or now you're going to be at risk for heart disease and so and other things. So, if Medicaid, if the people who are running Medicaid say, Dr. Dahlia, this is our funding and this is all we got, do we lose a lot of our resources for people to lose weight, which I understand, many individuals just can't lose the weight. It's very difficult for them. It's a medical condition. But should that money be for the people in the hospital, for people with amputation, cellulitis, necrotizing fasciitis, cancer, lymphomas, COPD, congestive heart failure? If there's only X amount of money, then where does that money go to? I would rather prevent the COPD I'd rather prevent the CHF, but unfortunately, no matter what we've done with, smoking cessation and all that. Well, one of the reasons why we have such an obesity crisis is because we were so successful in stopping smoking. The idea of, when you're hungry, like Virginia Slims, curb your appetite by smoking. That's what people did for years. I told you I had a patient who was smoking, and I said, "Would you like me to, help you, with your smoking cessation? Are you willing to try something so you don't smoke?" She goes, "Oh, I could quit any day." And I'm like, "Well, if you can, why do you smoke?" She goes, "Well, how do you think I have this body? This is what keeps me skinny." And I'm like, "Oh man." I go, "Do you have a cigarette?" No. But when we, did a great education campaign and told people to stop smoking, we saved lives. But now you don't see all these skinny people on the beach. You don't see all these skinny people smoking a cigarette. Now you see these skinny people drinking soda, having their lattes, and they're taking in calories. So, when I was told the taxpayer dollars would go to these medications, I knew there was going to be some drama with that. Because if you, come down with cancer or a heart condition and you took care of yourself, you should be first in line to get your tax-dollared, benefits and help, whether it's from Medicare, Medicaid, if you did work, your taxes went to that. If you aren't working, then no, you're not contributing to it. But, I would think the most sick and the individuals that need intervention, where there's no other option, should be the ones to have access to that Medi-Cal money or Medicaid money. But there's an argument to, well, if we can make people skinny, let's see what happens. But it looks like these states can't afford it. It looks like they just can't. And with that, now we, are having this drama. They say 16 state Medicaid programs are now stopping it. I just named some of the states. New York City's health insurer stopped covering them for city employees in 2025. Boston's, government insurance is also considering limiting it. They say Medicaid spending on GLP drugs in Pennsylvania alone was $1.3 billion in 2025. Now, again, these medications, all right, if you only have to go on it for 6 months and you reach your ideal weight, I'm for Medicaid covering it. But if you're plateauing after your average 20-some pounds, because if you read the studies, the average is like 20-some pounds. Well, that's fantastic. 10% of your body weight. If you're over 200 pounds, that's huge in terms of, medical health, but it's only 20-some pounds. And then after people lose that, they don't lose more on average. And now you're forced to still taking it or you rebound. That's going to be a waste of money. That we need to find a better weight loss drug. So if until these drugs become cheaper, we're going to have a lot of debates and people are going to be really frustrated with how our tax dollars are going to these drugs. And good for Michigan saying, look, we're only going to use this for morbidly obese. And maybe that's the answer for those people that want to lose 5 or 10 pounds to look good for their wedding. No, the taxpayers can't pay for that. But for those individuals who are morbidly obese and they could have comorbidities that could cost the state more, they should have the access to that. Now, that has also brought a question where people said, well, what about bariatric surgery? Shouldn't we, if somebody's using the government dime, suggest bariatric surgery? We don't want to force anybody into a procedure that they don't want. So no, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of forcing it, but giving it as an option, absolutely. Especially that might be cheaper in the long run than these GLP-1 drugs. 1-877-Doc-Dolly. Don't go away.
Looking for an easy read that can actually help secure someone's future? Pick up a copy of Mark Falter's book, Common Sense Income Strategies. For the past 30-plus years, Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. It's not rocket science, it's a pretty easy read. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. Common Sense Income Strategies is available now on Amazon or by calling 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Common Sense Income Strategies by Financial Fitness Show host Mark Falter. Secure your financial future today.